review, I will be reviewing Boogeyman Issue 2 by Ablaze. And moving into first things first, does this cover in any way, shape, or form connect to something that's inside with the story? Sure enough, it does, to which I give a 7.5 out of 10. I'll now go to showing some of the internal art as to what's also happening story-wise, as we look around the beginning, middle, and of course the end. So, as this story begins to start in this issue, it takes place where we left off in the first, and this is where we're at the main kid's house, and I forget the main kid's name. It would be nice if that was actually brought back into the story. But I certainly enjoyed the art in this, and got the kid and the character known as Father Deaf here. And of course, one of his, what's the word would I, companions with him. I'll now move towards the middle of the story. And as we start to move towards the middle of the story, I think this is very well done for a splash page. As you can see, that there's quite a lot happening here. And we get to see what's happening in the journey as they discuss what's happening, and also why the kid can only see these particular people that have also caused harm to his family members. And this person that he's with is called Father Deaf. And as we start to move towards the end of the story, they are starting to work their way across a bridge. And as we go down, Father Deaf mentions that the bridge belongs to him. So there might be something in relation to, say, maybe deeds or something that are connected to here. As we move across to the story, we do seem to see some other people that might actually be the living amongst these dead. So overall, for the internal art, I gave it a 7.5 out of 10. Now it's time to move in relation to the story. So first things first, did this story address anything on the issue of time? No, it didn't. And seeing I'm unable to cover references because there's not more than 5 issues, or no more than 4 or 5 issues of this yet. Moving into the area of locations, I do admit I think the locations need to be pointed out a little bit more in brief in this, instead of in some cases trying to make out where certain characters are in the story, because there are locations in this story which you do miss, but you've got no idea where they are in the journey. But the main locations I have sort of picked up in this have been the house, and of course the bridge where we saw earlier before with the internal art. The cast of characters consisting of Boogeyman, a grandma, Father Deaf, talk of the elders, or the elders in this particular world, and no idea who the kid is, let alone the dog companion which Father Deaf has with him. But overall, the story rating for this I give is a 7 out of 10. I think that the way that this is written, it's very long, and I think the writer is like missing an opportunity to get as much in as possible in relation to getting us to know the cast better, but instead it's focused a lot on the world building in relation to Boogeyman. And sometimes the world building can disrupt the story and disrupt what the writer is doing with the story. And this is where it really needs to get back into focus as to who the characters are for us, the reader. But overall, I do like this story. I'd definitely like to get it if it comes out in trade. So until then, let's keep it colourful. And story rating a 7 out of 10. And let's keep it cool and have yourself an awesome day. First things first, does this cover in any way, shape or form connect to something that is happening inside with the story? In some essence it does, to which I give the cover a 7 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the internal art and also what's happening story-wise. We start to move into the beginning of the story. We get to see what's happening here with the character of Oakley, who's basically Wynd's older adoptive family sister, and she learns a bit of a secret that the bandaged man, who was actually sought to go out after the Weird Bloods, was actually related to this vampire of this particular species. Or we now jump towards the middle of the middle of this, and we come across a bit of fight that's happening, and we've got General X and a couple of others. Finally start to reach towards the middle, and there's a fight between Wynd, who's gone a little bit crazy because he's wanting to find out what's happened to Oakley. And last but not least, a quick jump towards the end, to which we have the character of Bastion and a couple of others. So for the internal art, I gave this story a 7 out of 10. Now it's time to move into the story racing itself. Now, seeing that this has already had 3 volumes, we should have at least had a comic reference by now. But James Tynion, he's really lazy on this issue, and we don't even get one. And that's really annoying. This series needs references. The next area is time, as to when some of the things take place. None of that as well. The next area is location. No indication of where the location or where these events are taking place. Yeah, you get to see caves and somewhat mountaintops, but it doesn't really give us any indication, because I think in the last issue or the one before that, they were leaving the Weird Woods and starting to move somewhere else. As we move into this one, we got no idea where the F we are. So moving into the last thing, and that is the cast of characters. The cast of characters beginning with Oakley. We also had Wynd. We had someone by the name of Strawberry. We had Bastion, Titus, and General X. For the story rating in this series, as much as it looks really nice artistically, the story really lets down the reader. So overall, this story gets a 6 out of 10. I'll now get things quickly fixed up so I can start to organize and review the next one. Sorry, I'm unable to pause through the reviews because I don't have my don't have some of my main gear. So as we begin, we move into Boogyman issue 3. Again, this story is a mix between little information and not so much information. But let's get to the start. And does this cover in any way, shape, or form connect to something that's happening inside with the story? Sure enough, it does, to which I give it a 7 out of 10. Now let's move to some of the internal art around the beginning of the story. And of course, as we move into the beginning of the story, we catch up with the character known as Elliot, and he's with a character known as Father Death. They encounter some strange things along the way. And until he decides to open up and admit that, well, he hates the character. Because he's also the person that came in and sort of like saved him from the people who had attacked his family. And that sort of makes sense as well for the character. As we start to jump towards the end of the story, the young character decides to begin to make amends, realizing that he'd made a mistake. And I must admit, I really like the art in this. And this is Through a Blaze, and we start to move towards the end, and Father Death begins to head out, as they too are also being followed by people who seek to attack them. So for the internal art, I gave this a 7 out of 10. Next area is the area of the story and its rating. First things first, do we get any indication of when this takes place time-wise? No, we don't. About the next thing that we're moving on to is the area of locations. Now, one thing with this series is that I'd like it to be a little more clear with its locations that it shows in the story, because it leaves me to sort of like work out just from the artistic work that's being done to show me where this is taking place. The closest areas that I managed to get out of this were the streets of wherever Elliot is with the character of Father Death, and also the cafe that they go to at the end. The cast of characters consisting of Father Death, Elliot, and also some of the people who were in some essence chasing him, to which we didn't really get to see a lot of, and I forget that character's name. And this is another thing too, it really needs to work on improving letting the audience know who the cast of characters are. Does that ruin the story rating though? So the overall story rating, I gave it a 7 out of 10. Until then, let's keep it colourful and have yourself an awesome day.